This is more like home by Like to Laugh. Chapter 2. Danny had a bad feeling that this was only going to get more uncomfortable every time he explained it. And eventually they'd just come out and tell me that my parents are going to hurt someone if we don't stop them, he explained to Frostbite, wincing at the deep furrow in his brow. And I knew they were right. So yeah, they've been arrested and now they'll probably going to go to prison. I see. Frostbite frowned. I didn't realize your living situation was so tenuous, Great One. It's not, Danny said defensively. He rubbed his arm and grimaced again at the throb of his burnt skin. I mean, it was never going to be great, being a ghost living with ghost hunters. But they're my parents, you know? It never seemed so bad that losing them wouldn't be worse. He'd taken the compound, eating through his skin over the ache of being taken from his parents any day. Frostbite set a comforting hand on his shoulder, squeezing gently. Danny silted under Frostbite's soft gaze. I understand. It's difficult to decide when those who you love have hurt you too much to bear. But I think you'll thrive once you are free of the fear you have grown so accustomed to. Danny sighed. He hoped Frostbite was right. For now, though, thinking about the situation just made him feel guilty and sad. Frostbite smiled reassuringly, like he knew what Danny was thinking. So now, you said you needed your medical information? Frostbite prompted, turning away to rummage through some drawers for, of all things, a notebook. He leaned over and started writing without waiting for an answer. Let's see, there are your vials in both your human and spectrum forms. You'll need the equipment, I assume. If you can spare some, Danny agreed, floating over to sit on the table by Frostbite and watch him write. For you, anything, he said warmly. Now, I will add some more standard data sets for an ice core ghost of your age and power level for comparison. The factors that are likely to affect each measurement, a list of common ailments and deficiencies to look out for, particularly considering your changing circumstances. Frostbite muttered to himself and wrote for a while, filling page after page with detailed notes. Well, Danny marveled at him. It always stunned him how much Frostbite knew about caring for ghosts, how much there was to know about ghost biology, not to mention, of course, the side note and addendums for his specific physiology, like how he had all of his organs in his ghost form, but none of them were necessary, or how his human half muffled the symptoms most ghost ailments so they were more severe than they appeared. I'll come back, you know, Danny said after a while, flushed by how intently Frostbite was working on the little guidebook. Frostbite paused and smiled at him. I'll look forward to it, but I would certainly prefer to know that you were well cared for as possible during your absence, and that you have resources besides myself while you are in the human realm. Then he kept working. In the end, Frostbite filled up almost half the notebook, then disappeared into another room and returned with a small box packed with equipment. Ah, I had some of our specialists look at the weapon you brought us, Frostbite added, turning to retrieve something from another cabinet. It's quite an unpleasant thing. It leaves a residue that reacts violently with ectoplasm, eating it away. Its hydrophobic properties prevent you from washing it off. Our best chemist, Snowstorm, created a salve that will neutralize it. He held out a jar of transparent blue gel. Even though his parents wouldn't be firing any more of those at him, Danny found himself relieved. Thanks, Frostbite. You're the best. Tell Snowstorm thanks, too. For you, anything. Frostbite says again. Soft eyes. He briefly walked Danny through the equipment before finally releasing him with a cheerful wave. Danny began the long process of making his way back to the Fenton portal, stopping at each of the lair he passed. Dora was dismayed but understanding. Pandora was far out of the way. He didn't visit her as much anyway. She might not even notice his absence. Clockwork already knew because he knew everything. That just left his rogues. Skulker chased him around for a bit for being the bearer of bad news, while Ember stood back and laughed at them. Johnny swore a lot, and Kitty actually hugged him goodbye. The box ghost was crushed, so Danny asked Lunch Lady to cheer him up, so on and so forth. He was actually going to miss these guys. By the time he got back, it was evening. He'd been gone longer than he expected, since Frostbite had been so thorough with his information. Jazz was back from visiting their parents, sitting on the couch with her purse at her feet. She tucked everything she intended to keep into it, but since she moved out already, most of her stuff was at the dorm room anyway. How are they? Danny asked, unable to keep the nerves out of his voice. She closed her textbook and sighed. Right now, they're mostly just annoyed, Jazz said. I mean, they still think that they haven't done anything wrong, obviously, and this'll all blow over, she shrugged. I tried to emphasize that the Justice League had gotten involved. They were just saying they don't have all the facts. Mom even promised me they wouldn't hold it against them, and that it was admirable that the Justice League wanted to stand up for the rights of non-human beings. Just not ghosts, Danny muttered. Figures. I guess their stubbornness was bound to bite them in the butt one day, Jazz said softly. I didn't think it would be like this. Pause. Still, it's better this way. Danny smiled dryly. You mean with them getting arrested instead of vivisecting their son? Well, yes, Jazz said. She shrugged again, visibly uncomfortable. These are the consequences of their actions. Better they pay for them than you. Softer. God knows we've tried to talk to them around enough times. It's not like we didn't give them a chance. It was like everything else the last 2 days. Hard to admit, but also true. What your sister isn't mentioning, Constantine cut in, emerging from the kitchen, is that they're blaming the whole thing on your alter ego. They're saying that Phantom called the Justice League and manipulated them into being on his side. He snorted. Seriously, underestimating the bad they are. To be honest, Danny wasn't even surprised. Great, at least they're predictable. What about my human side? They're upset you haven't seen them like that, Jazz told him. And they have been insisting that you go to Vlad. They're not angry that the Justice League is taking custody of you. They actually seem kind of proud, but they're still protesting. Danny bit his cheek, glanced at Constantine. Can they make that happen? I mean, I'll just run away, but that would make things kind of hard on the civilian side, wouldn't it? Because he wasn't going to let that happen. Even if Batman got sick of dealing with him and kicked him out, even if he ended up having to fend for himself, he wasn't living with Vlad. Who knew what the older Haffa would do with that kind of control? He could dictate where Danny slept and who he talked to, what he ate, where he went to school. If he could ask the police to bring him to Danny, and they would. Constantine shrugged. Bat says they can't, especially with what we know about the situation. The tricky part is keeping you out of there without telling them why. He paused, considering Danny with a brief look of calculation. It'll help if we knew the story with this guy. It really wouldn't, Danny said ruefully. Since the story is half ghost related? Constantine rolled his eyes. Of course it is. What is he, your arch nemesis? Kind of. Felt like an oversimplification of their relationship. But Danny didn't want to explain either. Great. For the record, your parents being happy to put you in the lap of your arch nemesis isn't particularly a great sign either. Caught off guard, Danny scowled at him. I thought we were done making fun of my weird home life. Shitty. The word you're looking for is shitty. Don't push him, Jazz scolded Constantine, jabbing her closed book at him. Being in a healthier home environment will let him adjust his expectations and understand in his own way that he's gotten used to. He needs to come to terms with what happened in his own time. She didn't deny the accusation, which didn't make Danny feel any better. All right, Miss Psychiatrist, Constantine said, raising an eyebrow. I don't need to ask what you're majoring in. Jazz huffed at him. Batman returned through the front door. Danny was a little surprised he used doors when he's not specifically prompted to. Temporary custody has been arranged, he rumbled, entering the living room with not moving to sit down. I'll finalize the paperwork when I return. Why are you afraid of Vlad Masters? He directed the last question to Danny. Constantine swore under his breath. Danny winced. He wants to kill my dad, marry my mom, and adopt me by force? He said, letting the end lit up into a question like it would make it not so bad. Batman stared at him impassively. Danny sighed. We just have a lot of history. I don't want him to have that kind of power over me. You're hiding something. Danny flinches. Does he have something on you? Yeah, we have this whole pack of mutually assured destruction thing going on. He tried to be flippant, but no one bought it, and Batman looked only intensified despite most of his face being covered. He knows I'm half ghost, but he promised not to tell anyone as long as... He trailed off, biting his cheek. As long as you don't tell anyone he is, Batman concluded. Danny flinched. Is that it? Why was Danny allowed to keep secrets again? Right, because he had no choice. Because Danny was half-human freak that couldn't afford for it to be public knowledge. His throbbing injuries reminded him why, and Vlad insisted that tied them. God, Vlad was going to be pissed. What would he do once he realized that Batman had found out because of Danny? He'd plot revenge for sure, and it wouldn't be pretty. And combined with his mom's arrest, Danny was talking about Plasmius Maximus. Fight to the death kind of revenge. God, that was going to hurt. I see, Batman said, when Danny didn't answer. And for the record, Jazz cut in, Vlad wants Danny because he's obsessed and greedy, and not because Mom and Dad are a danger to him. Batman nodded in acknowledgement. He might not hurt me, Danny threw out, since it felt dangerous not to. He shouldn't give Batman the wrong impression just because he was holding a grudge. Sometimes he doesn't when it really counts. He couldn't forgive Vlad for all the things he had done to Danny and his loved ones. But it was impossible to deny that sometimes there was a sort of understanding between them. The understanding that they were the only two of their kind. Both Constantine and Batman stared at him. Christ, kid, you don't have an ounce of self-preservation in you, Constantine said at last. You gotta get that bleeding heart under control before it kills you. Danny scowled at him. What was that supposed to mean? So, the portal, right? Jazz interrupted desperately, setting her book down hard on the coffee table. Danny got his information from Frostbite and said goodbye to everyone, so it's time to shut it down. Let's go. All four of them went down to the lab, which seemed a little excessive, but none of them would stay behind. Batman and Constantine stayed a healthy distance from the portal, while Jazz fumbled with the controls. It's self-sustaining now, but turning it on for the first time shorted out half the city grid, she explained, holding open the control panel while she searched through everything. So they decided to leave it on was better than doing that every week or so. Danny showed me once how to turn it off for good, in case we, needed for some reason. I asked him to do it, and he understands it a lot better, but Danny stared at the swarming wormhole. Oddly entranced, Jazz shot him a worried look. Yeah, Jazz finished lamely and turned back to the control panel. He'd gotten so used to living with it nearby to know it was always around, locking the two dimensions together in sync. The way to the ghost zone, it was really so simple to just turn it off. Got it, Jazz said, shutting the panel. The portal waved, swirled shut, as if it was unwinding from reality. Within seconds, it blinked out, leaving a tunnel. The same tunnel Danny remembered from an age ago when he had taken his last hesitant steps as a human. The same wires bundled across the floor, the on and off switch on the side, lights not quite enough to illuminate inside. For some reason, the tunnel suddenly felt majestic, and he couldn't look away. Is that where? Constantine asked Jazz in an undertone. Jazz hummed in a worried affirmation. Yeah, okay, this is a ghost thing. Let's leave him to it. The other three retreated, leaving Danny standing in front of the dead portal. He hesitated, then sat down, staring inside. He remembered the strike of lightning like a physical blow, the crash of an impossible amount of ectoplasm pumping through his body, his scream bouncing off the walls as the two forces butted heads inside him, grinding him up and spitting him back out. He remembered the first time he felt a cold spot in his chest, a chill in his skin, the last spasms of electricity that ached of torn muscle. Eventually, he went back upstairs and asked Jazz to help him put the salve on his burns. This time, Danny left the explanation to Batman. I couldn't leave the situation as it was, Batman explained to Sam and Tucker, crammed into a booth at Nasty Burger. Someone was going to get hurt. For that reason, the Fentons have been arrested. The portal has been closed, and Danny will become a ward of the Justice League. Man, Sam said, resting her head on her fist. I think that's the fastest anyone has ever found out Danny's identity. Despite the lightness of her words, her eyes were sad. Ward of the Justice League, huh? Danny, that's a setup. Danny shrugged, managed to smile for his friends, ignored the fact that he hadn't touched his food instead of playing with the straw of his milkshake. His back and hip burned, rubbing against the cheap upholstery. The salve had cooled the sizzling acid, but it still hurt much more than normal. Yeah, I might graduate high school after all. Hell yeah, Tucker cheered, obviously trying to be encouraging. To Batman, he confirmed. Danny's great at the superhero gig, but was really doing a number on his life. This is going to be good for him. That's normal for teen heroes that start independently, Batman said, surprising Danny. We'll get him back on track. The two of you should concentrate on your normal lives as well. What about Jazz? Sam questioned sharply, startling the girl in question. She just lost her safety net. She'll receive some additional support, Batman assured her, unfazed. Jazz looked at him uncertain, and Batman elaborated. I'll give you a number to contact before I leave. You can discuss with them what you need. Thank you, Jazz said softly, looking sad again. Danny winced. Sam raised an eyebrow. Do you do this for everyone, or is Danny just special? More than the public realizes, Batman said. There's a support for both the immediate family of criminals arrested by the Justice League and for the families of the deceased members. Sam nodded thoughtfully. Tucker asked, So, what about Danny, though? It's great that the portal is closed and all, but it does kind of mess with the whole Guardian of the Gate thing that he's going on. Danny made a face at him. That's for him to decide, Batman said calmly. The details are confidential. Yo, what's Venture doing with Batman? What's Batman doing in Amity? Danny flinched, sinking down with heat crawling across his face. He set his milkshake down and pushed it away. Jazz pinched the bridge of her nose. Batman lifted his head to stare at Dash. That was it. This was when Batman realized Danny was just a stupid kid. That he didn't have the kind of cool-headed competence Batman probably expected in another hero, and that Danny wasn't worth his time. Not when he didn't even know how to keep other kids off his back without hurting them. Dash, with all the confidence of a high school star quarterback, swaggered over, leaning against the booth opposite Batman, and grinned at him. A few other A-listers were clustered behind him, including Pamela and Kawan, whispering and staring. You shouldn't hang out with these losers, Mr. Batman, Dash jerked, oblivious to the attention. Considering who his parents are, freaky Fentons, probably radioactive or something. Danny's face felt like it was on fire. He hunched over, trying to pretend like he wasn't getting bullied in front of Batman. You're here about the ghost, right? You really should talk to Phantom. My business in Amity is done, Batman said after a long moment. Do you make habits of this, Mr. Baxter? Josh said, looking instantly baffled. Dash Baxter. Make a habit of what? Of using the dichotomy names of social outcast, said Batman. Dash froze. You shouldn't. Socially outcast usually requires the most support from their peers. They are not deviants required of correction. Empathy is more useful than force, Mr. Baxter. What? You beat people up all the time, Dash protested, eyes wide. An A-list behind him was gone just as quick. That's like your whole thing. I stop crimes in progress, said Batman. I don't go to their homes and beat them up for being in debt. Dash was a dead pale now. Right. Sorry, Mr. Batman. Sorry. He turned around and bolted, not pausing to wait for anyone else to follow. Holy shit, Sam whispered gleefully. You really did it to him. Danny didn't look up. You didn't have to do that, he mumbled. Yes, I did. Batman disagreed without looking at him. Even if you were a civilian, that would still make you a young teenager with erratic parents, hazardous living conditions, and an insecure food situation, and frequent exposure to violence. Those are not reasons to target you. Jazz smiled gratefully at Batman. Dash really looks up to heroes, she told him. Maybe this will get through to him in a way nothing else has. Batman nodded, but thankfully didn't say anything else. Danny took a deep breath and tried to shake off the encounter. With any luck, he'd never see Dash again. And away from his parents, he might be able to avoid the bottom-rung social status that plagued him here. He didn't have to think about Dash's jabs about him being radioactive. He didn't have to think about how he was right. Danny, is everything okay here? Danny jumped, startled to see Valerie approaching. Hey, Val, I didn't realize you were working. I would have said hi. Oh, I just got off shift, Valerie said. And it looks like you were preoccupied anyways. She eyed Batman warily. Batman gave her a nod. So, what's the story? It's a long one, Sam said, a hint of warning in her voice. Valerie pulled up a chair without waiting for an invitation, raised an eyebrow. Danny smiled at her. Valerie flashed him a tense smile back, the worry not leaving her eyes. Can you, keep it kind of quiet? Danny asked softly. Valerie nodded. My parents are being arrested. I'm probably not going to be back here. Valerie's eyebrows flew even higher, but her expression turned sympathetic. I'm sorry, Danny. That sucks. Are you going to be okay, Jazz? She glanced at Jazz curiously, but the worry was genuine. We're okay, Jazz sighed, trying for a brave smile. It's not entirely unexpected, to be honest. It was a surprise for me, but it probably shouldn't have been, Danny admitted to Valerie. And we've been taking care of Batman, even made sure I wouldn't have to go live with my godfather. Valerie's brows furrowed. Who's your godfather? Vlad Masters, Danny said flatly. Even Valerie didn't know the whole story. She'd definitely seen them get into fights before. It wasn't like their connection was a secret. Sure enough, Valerie's expression transformed into alarm. Geez, I didn't know that. After only a moment, her expression creased again, and she glanced at Batman, shifting nervously in place. When are you leaving? Late tomorrow morning, Batman said, studying her. I didn't realize the two of you were friends. Valerie smiled through the tension, didn't leave her. Yeah, Danny's a sweet guy. I'm too busy for us to hang out much, though. Can I talk to you before you go? Certainly. I'll find you. Danny suspected suddenly that Batman knew who Valerie was. Oblivious to this, Valerie looked relieved. Thanks, and will you take care of Danny? He's pretty echo-contaminated, and he'll need help managing it. In a mutter, she tacked on, not that his parents were doing that. He'll be housed with the Justice League Associate, Batman promised. They'll look after him. At last, Valerie smiled again. It looked genuine this time. Good. She looked at Danny. Don't be a stranger, Danny. And hey, maybe away from all these ghosts, you can focus on school again. Get your grades up and be an astronaut after all. Danny smiled back. Here's hoping. And I'll talk to you later, Val. Talk to you later, Val, Sam muttered. Valerie rolled her eyes as she got up and walked away, and Sam fixed her attention back on Danny. Be careful, Danny. The last thing you need is for ghost hunters to follow you to Gotham. She has a whole life here, Sam, Danny pointed out, exasperated. For once, I'm not talking about Valerie, Sam said grimly. He'll be under my protection, Batman rumbled. Gotham is bat territory. Not much slips past us. It was really reassuring, actually. He was going to be living with Batman himself, and Danny didn't doubt that they'd be all over trouble as soon as it rolled in. Let's see the GIW kidnap him out from under Batman's nose. It had been a long time since Danny trusted this easily. And we'll be with you when we can, man, Tucker added seriously. Gotham, you just hit the top of my list. Sam nodded in her agreement, and when Danny moved to protest, Tucker cut him off. Wayne Enterprises is right there, man. It's not like it's a bad option. Finally, Danny smiled. Thanks, guys. No matter what else happened, at least he had his friends. You've signed up for a hell of a lot more weirdness than you usually put up with, Bats. Bruce sighed, leaning over the blueprints that the two Fenton children had left behind. Most of them were for weapons, but he suspected the portal blueprints were in there somewhere, and he didn't want to leave them to be found. I'm aware, but I don't see that I have much of a choice. He can't be adopted by a civilian. Valerie Gray had made a point of telling Bruce about Vlad Masters, half-ghost, that night, when Batman dropped in to speak with her vigilante persona. It was a surprise that she knew, considering how secretive he was, and it was also highlighted that, despite Valerie's clear hatred of Danny's ghost half, she genuinely cared about his human identity. Bruce wasn't sure exactly how to feel about that, and it was probably for the best that Danny would be taken away from the whole mess. Valerie herself had received a stern reprimand about attacking known allies without provocation, regardless of her suspicions and personal feelings. Even Batman knew his paranoia did not outright attack unknowns before they turned aggressive. Valerie had left the conversation looking shaken and chastised. Constantine snorted. No kidding. as bad as things were for him here, it's not much better to hand him over to some poor bastard that doesn't know shit about ghosts. Speaking of which, Constantine tossed a notebook into the blueprints in front of Bruce. It looked new, most likely purchased that week, and dotted with tabs. Bruce had a bad feeling about this. Danny is a realm's ghost, Constantine told Bruce, which, for the record, puts him in the top 5% of things I try to avoid. That notebook should tell you most of what you need to know about that, and what we know about Danny specifically. Meaning? Congrats, bats. It's non-human this time. Constantine deadpan, making Bruce's mouth twitch in irritation. It's not just that his physiology that's special, his mind works different too. So I wrote the highlights in there. Realm ghosts are known for their obsessions and their territorial behavior. And he's a young ghost, which means he's gonna grow up. And then I threw in some care and feeding for favor. This was unfortunately actually very thorough, and rather more effort than Constantine usually put into anything. Bruce would have to look up the existence of his and Phantom's interactions. Bruce nodded. I'll read it. You better. I spent all day on it.